What is your superpower? Andrew, you stole my idea. Know what you did. But there must be some sort of connection then with superpower being linked to the theme of metamorphosis. So I was walking up the back on Tuesday, and Julia showed me how to come up into the entrance, and she said, "Your name, it's Tomaselli. Is it Italian?" "Hey, I'm Italian. Are you Italian?" I said, "No." My grandfather was Italian. My great-grandfather was Italian, so it makes complete sense that, in fact, I was born in South Africa. So if you don't know where South Africa is, you find Africa, you go south, you keep going. When you get to the world, that's pretty much us. If you go any further, you fall off the edge of the earth. So, where was I? I was in Durban. Spoke to a friend of mine. I said, "I'm in Zhuhai now." He said, "Zhuhai," and he went and he looked it up, and he said, "Okay, Zhuhai, port city, East Coast, tropical climate, 35 degrees in the shade." He said, "You are in China, Durban." So I'm quite far from home, but in some ways I sometimes wonder how far I am from home. Anyways, growing up in South Africa as a kid, what I really wanted was to have magical superpowers like main man He-Man from Masters of the Universe. So I'm the one on the left. And one day, I kind of, in my own way, for a little while, got to be He-Man. But I did not get superpowers. There were no magical superpowers. So I think maybe my magical superpowers came from somewhere else. So rewind to 1990. My father gets a sabbatical from South Africa to work at the University of Chapel Hill, North Carolina in the USA. So myself, my sister, my mother will go over. And we go over to this new world. So 1990 was a big year. You had television. They showed the Berlin Wall and the launch of the Space Telescope. I remember my father watching a tape. We had tapes back in the day. And he was watching news footage of Nelson Mandela being released from prison. And I walked through in the afternoon, and he was watching it from the morning. He just kept rewatching it. I said, "You just keep watching this." He says, "That's how important this is." So my parents were obsessed with global politics, the greenhouse effect, country reunification. We had the HIV pandemic. Of course, I didn't understand really any of this stuff. For me, my immediate concern was much more along the lines of why it is that I have to wake up in the dark at 6:30 to go and catch the bus in the... I come from South Africa. Like, what is this stinging cold sensation on my skin? My sister. So I did not know the term culture shock, but I was experiencing a new culture, and it shocked me. My sister was 6 years old. She remembers nothing. I was 8 years old, and I remember everything, and I think that became my superpower. I was old enough to have a formative identity and be able to remember these experiences, but young enough to still be plastic in the way that I saw the world. And that opened me up to a new way of thinking. There was a huge contrast. We went from 3 television channels to having over 100 television channels on cable. Slices bigger than your head. You couldn't finish them. And of course, we had the red little plumber who would make the world better by stomping on one evil mushroom at a time. In fact, it was kind of like someone went and pressed Control-I, and everything was inverted. It was cricket for baseball, soccer for basketball, all the different changes, bushveld for poison ivy. I learned that one the hard way. Blazers for winter jackets. Blazers thing would always confuse me because that came from South Africa. Subtropical climate, 35 degrees in the shade. Blazers? This is a good idea? So South Africa was a very conformist culture, very conformist set. When I was growing up, we still had conscription in the army. You had to do 2 years of army service after you finished. And that sort of mindset trickled its way down, I'd say even into the schools, became very militant. I was a bit less enthusiastic about some of these ideas. So those are my father's uncles, and that's me, a bit less enthusiastic about all of the conformity ideas. I didn't understand the logic behind why I had to cut my hair, why I had to have certain color socks, why I had to do all these things. I didn't understand the link between this and getting an A. So I would ask a question, and probably the scariest question a kid can ever ask an adult. I broke the technology. Why? Why? Because kids are always asking why anyways. Why do I have to stay up late when I have to read this book report, but I have to go to bed early when I want to watch TV? Why? Now the adults, I thought generally they were pretty smart for the most part. I mean, after all, these were the people who created He-Man and the Masters of the Universe. They must know something. But sometimes I thought maybe these adults, anything. So I would, and the answer was kind of always very similar. Different words, but the same answer. Because Y is not a straight line. It's designed to take the scenic route. So I gave up with these adults. They're always carrying on about, oh, we put a man on the moon and we got polio. You did all of that, but you can't answer my simple question? So I figured out maybe I need to put some of these ideas together for myself. For 6 months, we moved from North Carolina to... Now, I had seen snow, but I'd never really seen that kind of snow, the Disney movie, where everything's just covered in a blanket of snow and there's no footprints. And they were always telling me in Michigan, have you seen snowfall yet? No. Have you seen snowfall yet? No. Every morning I run to the window. No snow. Then one day I walked into my mom's room and she said, have you looked out the window? I said, no. Out the window, opened the curtain. It was just a blanket of snow. No footprints. It was a magical moment, deep etched, seared into my memory. And in fact, the entire year was like this. It was just one memory, one experience after another. Different people, different places. And I experienced all of this completely alone. I had my family, but I didn't really have much in the way of friends because we were always moving. Friends like Obi. Obi and I had similar in common. We were both from Africa. He was from Nigeria. I was from South Africa. Apart from that, everything between Obi and I was kind of different. I was a year younger. Well, older. He was younger. He was black. I was white. Now in Africa, we wouldn't have even have been allowed to have been friends. It was still during apartheid. This was a unique friendship. None of that really mattered to Obi and I. The only thing that mattered to us was that Obi had a Nintendo, and we would spend hours just jumping and smashing bricks and stealing coins, and you see these little turtles, they try to hurt you. And we had to save Princess from the evil Bowser. And we came pretty close until one day. It was just game over. My dad's sabbatical was up, and we had to leave. You don't know what that does to two young, impressionable kids. We had just got to level 8, the death ship level, with the sun. To this day, I don't think anyone's even saved the princess. She's probably waiting there now. And what about the snowball fights, the fortress, the other team will come and take it. We're supposed to just leave? So I asked my mother. My mother at this time, I thought, was probably the smartest person on the planet. I still think she's kind of the smartest person on the planet. So if you're recording this, hi, Mom. And I said, Mom, why do we have to leave? Why do I have to leave my friend? My mother took the scenic route with her answer. And her answer was in the form of a book, Orlando's Little Wild Friends. Orlando was a little boy like me. Orlando was always traveling like me. Orlando would have all of these friends for a little while, like me. And I thought, what is my trying to tell me? Eventually I thought, about Orlando, what about me? But I realized something. When I came back to South Africa, it was like I'd had this entire secret experience. It was just 1 year, but it felt like another world, another life. And I felt that I had some sort of superpower. I had leveled up in some way with all the experiences and all the people who I had met. Heraclitus said, apparently, the only constant is change. Now, in my academic life, I've come to appreciate works of Mikhail Bakhtin, who speaks about time and space in the novel. He says they are inseparable and they form meaning. And he explains this under the term chronotope. I think we all have chronotope, time and space, experiences, moments are fleeting, never to be repeated again. They organize meaning. They are all opportunities, chances for us to level up our superpowers. Now, that was one experience, but since then, I've had other experiences. I've traveled every continent except Australia. I've been down to Antarctica. I've been to Canada. I didn't see any penguins. The point is, all of these are opportunities to learn, to grow. Then I was reminded about something that my grandfather told me. My grandfather was in his 80s, and he said to me, anyone can teach you something that you did not know. He said, a 5-year-old can teach me something. So I will put this idea to you. The next time you find yourself, be just a mundane, normal, everyday situation. Speak to your teachers. Speak to your colleagues. Speak to your janitors. Maybe the next time you find yourself in the elevator with that 5-year-old, ask them the question, what is your superpower? Thank you.